Okay, Tower 2 has made it into the game, more features have been added, and we're finally getting closer. Tower 2 has made it to the game, Tower 2 has made it to the game, more features have been added, and we're finally getting closer to our first test build. So let's take a look at what we have been doing during November 2024. My name is Kion, welcome to the Gateway Game Project. Welcome to the Gateway Game Project. My name is Kion, welcome to the Gateway Game Project. So without further talking, my name is Kion, welcome to the Gateway Game Project, and let's get started. Now hear me out. I kind of cheated on this as Now hear me out. I kind of just cheated on this as I modified our existing Tower A model, but hey, it works, I guess. Hope. Now hear me out. I kind of just cheated. Now hear me out. I kind of just cheated on this as I used our existing Tower A model to look like Tower B, but hey, it works. Now hear me out. I kind of cheated on this as I modified our existing Tower A model to look like Tower B, but hey, if it works, I guess. Now I actually have some video clips of me modifying the towers. So here's Kion's guide on how to make Tower A look like Tower B in Blender. First, I started by gathering some reference images to work with. In this case, I was looking for images. I also looked at several reference images to try. I also looked at several reference images. I also looked at several reference images to see and try to spot any noticeable differences on the outside. After that, I kind of just imported them into Blender. Also, one note is that before importing them into Blender, I did have to convert the file format on the images since for some reason Twitter uses a .gfif. GFIF stands for image. GFIF stands for JPEG file interchange format. I really don't know much about this. I really don't have time. Probably after making this video, I'll research more about it. But if you have any suggestions or thoughts about this, let me know in the comments. Anyways, nerdy ran out of the way. Nerdy ran out of the way. Let's move on. I also tried to import some aerials to FSpy to try to get the camera's focal length and position, but since I suck at using FSpy, after a bit, I just quit it and moved on. I started by modeling the rails seen on top of the real Tower 2. After messing around and trying to get, after that, it was time for the base. Again, I modeled this by eye, so not the most accurate, but it will work for now. Then I made a profile of an I-beam, which I think it's what it's called, which I then duplicated and used it throughout most of the beams on the base, using some cubes for some plates and walls as well. It took me a few tries and kind of fiddling around to get things to work. As always, to keep this entertaining but somewhat informational, I won't go into depth on how I created. Basically, it's just a horizontally stretched brick texture for the discoloration, a wave texture to kind of separate the parts, and some noise for the imperfections. Also, I decided to add some scaffolding to the tower, just like it has currently in real life. These are just cubes, so yeah, not really much to it. Just some stretched cubes for the base, for the poles, and a simple metal material, and that's it. I also made a speculated design. I also made a simple speculated design on what the second pad flame trench could look like with the OLM placed on top. After that, Lewis worked on fixing a few bugs and also added Unreal Engine's new cloud and sky system into the game. Gosh, these views Dude, I'm telling you what, these views look insane. A full trailer is likely to be a full trailer is like a full trailer is likely to be a full trailer is likely to be released to this YouTube channel soon in the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. Here, you can change the max amount of FPS that you want, so it's basically a threshold meaning that the FPS, here you can change the max amount of FPS that you want, so it's basically a threshold meaning that the FPS will not exceed the amount set in this box. Below that, you can toggle the FPS counter. Below that, you can toggle the FPS counter to see the performance during gameplay. As the end goal with this build is to gather as much data on performance near the launch site as the end goal with this build is to gather as much as the end goal for this this is very important for the asset test build. This is very important for builds like this is very important for especially the asset test build, as the end goal with this build is to gather as below that, you can toggle the FPS counter the FPS counter to see the performance during gameplay. This is very important especially for the asset test build. As the end goal with this build is to gather as much data on performance near the launch and production/build site. In the video settings, you can change game resolution, change the ambient sounds, and the UI click sound, effects. Later on, when we add music, there will be an option here as well to change the volume for the music playing in the background. We also worked on the development page. Here at the top, you can see a small description of Gateway's development. Then at the bottom, you can see some info about the current. Below that, you can see some info about the current update that you're playing and the change logs. Once we have a website, this button will link you to our this button at the bottom will link to previous changelog. Now I believe we're only going to be covering major updates. And finally at the bottom we have we of course have a link to our development updates playlist and some links to follow us on social media. And one final thing is that Lewis added Lewis also added this quit confirm pop-up. Now hopefully next there is also going to be a basic home screen. Now there's also going to be a basic UI on the launch. There's also going to be a basic UI for the launch view. We'll talk a bit. Now there's also going to be a launch UI. Now there's also going to be a UI for the launch view. So we'll talk a bit more about that in next month's update. This first build has taken a while due to several several unexpected bugs, challenges, and making an Easter egg. More of that in next month's update. While developing this update, we encountered a few bugs. The first major bug was that Unreal Engine was unable to package the game. We found the cause of this being the plugin that we used to add water to the game, so we have temporarily disabled the So we have temporarily disabled the plugin. Another cause was the shipping package setting. Another cause was that the shipping package setting. Another cause was the shipping packaging setting. Another cause was the shipping packaging setting. So for now we have changed that to development. So for now we've changed it to development. We currently have 2 bugs that are still not fixed. These include in-game graphics being probably worse than in viewport and not being able to play the game once gone back to the main menu and pressing the start game button. Currently Lewis is working on fixing these bugs, which is why it's so difficult to put an exact date for this first build. Also recently we've chose 5 people to join our game testing for this build. Don't worry if you didn't, stay tuned for future builds, coming in the future. And don't worry if you didn't, more updates will be coming in the future. We specifically chose people with low NPCs as a rough guide for performance. Lewis was able to get 70 FPS on an RTX 3060. If all goes well, expect this first build to be released in a few days. So yeah, that's it for this month's update. And there's only one more update left to end off the year. Well, the year is coming to an end. And also make sure to subscribe. to this YouTube channel for more of these development updates. Speaking of which, if you want to see more development updates like this, check out our playlist with all of the updates that we've done since April of 2024. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching. And speaking of which, if you want to see more development updates like this, check out our playlist with all of the we'd like to thank you so much for all of your support throughout this year, and we'll see you guys in our final 2024 monthly update next month. Have a nice day.